Part 28.1, Surah Al-Qasas, the stories Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to Sufi Essence with Hammad Syed. We commence today a profound, majestic journey into Surah Al-Qasas, the stories. An illumination that begins with the enigmatic power of the symbolic letters. Tā Sīn Mīm, revealed during the critical period in Makkah, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the early believers were facing relentless persecution. This surah serves as a monumental source of solace, spiritual fortification, and undeniable proof. Its title, Al-Qasas, means the stories or the narratives related in sequence, and its central purpose is to relate the life of Moses, peace be upon him, with an astonishing degree of detail, painting a narrative arc that mirrors the precise struggle of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, against the tyrants of Quraysh. The majestic flow of this surah is designed to reassure the oppressed believers that Allah's historical pattern of justice is immutable. Tyranny, however entrenched, is always temporary, and the ultimate triumph belongs to the weak, the disenfranchised, and the God-fearing muchachon. The vivid account of Moses, peace be upon him, from his miraculous, fragile beginning in a basket on the Nile, to his rise as a messenger against the colossal arrogance of Pharaoh, is not mere history. It is a timeless spiritual blueprint for perseverance, sabr, and reliance upon Allah, ArRahman and ArRaheem. It is a narrative that transforms history into immediate spiritual ilm. Kanz Iman, Quran, Al-Qasas, the stories, chapter 28, verse 1-6. The keys to the clear book and the dawn of divine will Kanz Iman, Qasas, the stories, chapter 28, verse 1, Tā Sīn Mīm. The surah opens, like several others, with the disconnected letters Hurf Muka, At, Top Sīn Mvs. Letters are the profound, esoteric keys to the Quran, a mystery that immediately elevates the discourse above the merely mundane. For the Sufi, they represent the very Azar secrets of creation and language, a divine code signifying the ineffable origin of the revelation. They are a signature of Allah's unique power, Qudra, over words and their meanings, reminding the listener that the book that follows is from an inexhaustible, transcendent source. The very inclusion of these letters challenges the deniers to find a comparable source for the wisdom that is about to unfold, immediately setting the tone for the absolute, unchallengeable authority of the subsequent verses. This Tā Sīn Mīm serves as a majestic prelude to the grand narrative that defines the surah, asserting the supernatural origin of the calm all-word of Allah by beginning with letters that are simultaneously commonplace elements of the Arabic language and profound signposts of the divine's transcendent knowledge. The philosophical implication of these letters cannot be overstated. They represent the raw materials of the creation of the universe, just as the letters form words. By using them as an opening, Allah reminds humanity that the very structure of the cosmos, the laws of physics, and the essence of language itself proceed from a singular, unified will. The Hurf Muka At stand as a monument to the Quran's Jz miraculous inimitability, signaling that while the human tongue may utter these same sounds, the arrangement and the depth of meaning they introduce are purely divine. This foundation is essential for the narratives that follow, which demonstrate Allah's comprehensive sovereignty over time, destiny, and the rise and fall of civilizations. Kanz Iman, Quran, Al-Qasas, the stories, chapter 28, verse 2. These are the verses of the clear book. Following the mystery of the letters comes the immediate affirmation of the revelation's nature. These are the verses of the clear book. The Quran is identified as Al-Kitāb, the book that is clear in itself, clear in its evidence, and makes clear the path of truth. This term Mubīn serves as a sharp contrast to the confusion, polytheism, and historical distortions of the time. The Quran is not ambiguous. It is a manifest, luminous, and articulate testament. Its clarity is a divine mercy, a hidayah guidance that requires no supplement or external clarification for its core message of Tawheed. For the educated listener, this verse establishes the philosophical grounding of the entire Islamic spiritual tradition. The ilm required for salvation is not hidden in obscure rituals, but laid out plainly in the divine text, allowing the qalb to engage with it directly and without intermediary obfuscation. The attribute of clear denotes the inherent self-evidence of the Quran's spiritual, ethical, and legal principles. Unlike the scriptures that may have been subject to human alteration, Quran's preservation and internal consistency ensure its perpetual mub status. This declaration acts as a spiritual call to action, demanding that the listener recognize the immense weight of the truth being presented. The fact that the most essential LM for the Ru is presented clearly removes all plausible excuses for denial or misinterpretation. It is a book that clarifies the purpose of existence, the nature of the Akira hereafter, and the historical patterns of divine justice, all of which are about to be exemplified in the detailed account of Moses' peace be upon him and Pharaoh. This sets the tone of accountability. What is clear must be followed. Kanzel Aman, Quran, Al-Qasas, The Stories, Chapter 28. Verse 3. We recite to you some part of the story of Moses and Pharaoh in truth, for a people who believe. This verse announces the primary theme and the purpose of the narration. We recite to you some part of the story of Moses and Pharaoh in truth. The use of we recite, reiterates the personal, direct involvement of Allah in the delivery of the message, emphasizing the authentic, undisputed nature of the account. It is narrated bil-Yakin, truth meaning it is historically accurate, ethically sound, and spiritually purposeful. The story is presented as an unvarnished reality, correcting the corrupted historical accounts of the people of the book and presenting the definitive, divine perspective. The entire episode of Moses' peace be upon him and Pharaoh is presented as an ayah sign within history, a recurring pattern of conflict between Tawheed and Shirk polytheism. The selection of the story Nabah of Moses peace be upon him is deliberate and profound, as his life contains the most complete and dramatic parallel to the challenges faced by the Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him in Makkah. A messenger raised in the heart of the enemy's territory, confronting an arrogant tyrant, and tasked with redeeming a marginalized community. Crucially, the narration is delivered for a people who believe. This highlights the audience's prerequisite. The narration of the stories Al-Qasas is not for intellectual entertainment or mere historical study. It is for spiritual conviction. Only those who already possess the seed of belief will extract the profound, nurturing elim from the narrative, the lessons of patience, the certainty of divine timing, and the unwavering conviction in Allah's promise of support for the oppressed. The Sufi knows that the Qasas here serves to solidify the inner state of yakin certainty. By providing historical evidence of Allah's absolute management tadbir of the universe, this specificity of audience ensures the verses are received not as passive literature, but as active spiritual medicine for the qalb, guiding them on how to navigate the relentless antagonism of the Quraysh, who viewed themselves as the modern-day pharaohs of their era. The truth of the story serves as a mirror, reflecting both the dignity of the persecuted believers and the inevitable dark end of the arrogant deniers. Kanzel Iman Quran. Al-Qasas, The Stories, Chapter 28. Verse 4. Indeed, Pharaoh exalted himself in the land and divided its inhabitants into factions, weakening a group of them, slaughtering their sons and keeping their women alive. Indeed, he was of the mischief makers. Here begins the profound social and political commentary that sets the stage for divine intervention. Indeed, Pharaoh exalted himself in the land. The term exalted himself, ascended, signifies his arrogance. His rebellion against the natural order and his claim to divinity Uluww. This exaltation is the first stage of tyranny, where the ruler sets himself above the ethical and spiritual constraints of humanity. Pharaoh's tyranny was not just a matter of personal evil, it was systemic. He divided its inhabitants into factions, a strategy of oppression designed to prevent unity among the people, allowing him to maintain absolute control by setting one group against the other. This socio-political reality is key to understanding tyranny throughout history. The division of people into subservient groups, shan. The tyrant deliberately fragments the social fabric, ensuring no unified opposition can challenge his illegitimate authority. The very act of dividing Jalashian is an act of shirk polytheism because it replaces the single, unifying truth of Allah's lordship with artificial divisive loyalties. The verse details the specific cruelty against the Israelites, weakening a group of them, slaughtering their sons and keeping their women alive. The slaughtering of the sons was an attempt at ethnic cleansing, aimed at eliminating future male leadership, while keeping the women alive was a method of degrading the entire community into permanent servility. This cruelty against the most vulnerable Mustaka Fen is presented as the immediate trigger for Allah's subsequent action. This systematic degradation is the pinnacle of worldly injustice, where the tyrant attempts to control not just the present, but the future destiny of an entire people. The verb yastafu weakening carries the sense of continuous, deliberate, and relentless persecution, aimed at crushing the very soul and spirit of the oppressed community. The verse concludes with the absolute moral judgment. Indeed, he was of the mischief makers mufsadan. Fasād, mischief, corruption. It's the spiritual and moral opposite of the divine order, al-righteousness order. Pharaoh's dominion was one of Fasād, because it violated the sanctity of life, dignity, and justice. This verdict is critical as it justifies the subsequent divine dismantling of his power. The term mufsadan is a comprehensive condemnation, encompassing political tyranny, social injustice, and the spiritual crime of rejecting Tawheed. His actions were not merely bad. They were destructive to the fabric of existence, thus earning the swift, inevitable response from the creator of all order. Kanzelaman Quran, Al-Qasas the Stories, chapter 28. Verse 5. And we wish to bestow favor on those who were oppressed in the land, to make them leaders, and to make them the inheritors. This verse, standing in direct contrast to the preceding one, is the essence of the divine promise and the central motivational message of the surah, and we wished to bestow favor on those who were oppressed in the land. The divine will urd intervenes precisely at the point of maximum oppression, istid f. Allah deliberately names them aladna istuif, those who were oppressed, not simply the weak. This confirms that their suffering was inflicted upon them by external power. The favor Manan promised is triple, to make them leaders as spiritual and temporal guides, and to make them the inheritors Wārithīn the successors to the power and prosperity of the tyrants. This sentence is a monument to the theology of hope. The use of the past tense wa nerd and we wished signifies that this plan was not a reaction, but a preordained, unchangeable, and fundamental aspect of Allah's divine law, Sunnah. The narrative of Moses, peace be upon him, is the historical proof of this eternal law. This declaration is a powerful spiritual doctrine, affirming the transient nature of evil and the ultimate victory of righteousness. It assures the persecuted believers in Makkah that just as Allah elevated the oppressed Israelites, He would likewise raise them up against the Quraysh. It is a promise rooted in Allah's eternal names, ArRahman and ArRaheem, whose mercy embraces even the most desolate state of the oppressed. The term Wārithīn is a profound spiritual concept, implying they will inherit the earth, becoming the stewards of the planet and the guardians of truth and inheritance based on spiritual merit, not earthly conquest. The highest form of leadership imba is that of Tawheed, guiding humanity out of the darkness of shirk into the light of submission ilm. The very act of Allah's Manan bestowing favor reverses the course of history, demonstrating that true power rests not with the boastful human tyrant, but with the Lord of the universe. Kanzelaman, Quran, Al-Qasas the Stories, chapter 28. Verse 6. And to establish them in the land, and to show Pharaoh and Hammad and their hosts, through them, that which they were fearing. The final verse in this opening passage reiterates the completeness of the divine plan, to establish them in the land. This Tamkīn establishment, empowerment, is the final stage of Allah's favor, granting the formerly oppressed genuine power and security. Amen. This establishment is not merely political, but spiritual, ensuring the prevalence of Tawheed and justice. The historical narrative of the Israelites being freed from Egyptian slavery and eventually ruling their own land is the concrete proof of this Tamkīn, which for the believers in Makkah represented the future promise of victory and security for Islam. The Sufi sees this as the establishment of Tawheed in the heart kalb. Once the inner tyrant, the nafsul amra, is defeated, the ruh is established in the land of the spirit, achieving true spiritual dominion. The most magnificent part of the promise is the exquisite poetic justice, and to show Pharaoh and Hammad and their hosts through them that which they were fearing. Pharaoh's entire strategy, including the slaughtering of the sons, was driven by a fear, a prophecy, or a dream that a male Israelite would rise and dismantle his kingdom. Allah's plan is so perfect that the very thing Pharaoh feared a rising Israelite leaders brought about. And it is witnessed by him and his chief aide Haman, through the instrument of the very people they sought to destroy. This is the divine irony, the ultimate display of Qudra. The tyrant's downfall is engineered using the very means he employed for prevention. The fear they sought to avoid became the exact reality of their destruction. The mention of Haman emphasizes that no level of ministerial cunning or bureaucratic efficiency can frustrate the divine will. This lesson, delivered to the early Muslims, guarantees that no amount of human plotting can ever circumvent the perfect and inevitable will of Allah. The ultimate destiny is already written, and the purpose of the stories is to teach the believer how to align their inner state El with the certainty of Allah's historical and cosmological sunnah. Hadith. The opening verses of Surah Al-Qasas provide a spiritual framework for perseverance against oppression, centering the narrative on the divine will to elevate the oppressed al-Mustakafun. The ultimate lesson is that worldly pride, Uluww, and tyranny, Fasād, are transient, while humility and tawakkul, reliance on Allah, lead to eternal Tamkīn, empowerment. The life of Moses, peace be upon him, as recounted here, is a profound example of this principle. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught, "There is no man who humbles himself for the sake of Allah, but Allah will raise him." Sahih Muslim 2588C, Hadith number 2588C, graded as Sahih. This hadith beautifully encapsulates the spiritual mechanism behind the verses of Al-Qasas. Pharaoh exalted himself in the land al-Bafalar, Arshaba, leading directly to his downfall, while the Israelites, though oppressed and weak, were destined for elevation. The hadith confirms that the path to true leadership, Ayima, and inheritance, Wārithīn, promised in verse 5 is paved not with worldly ambition, but with genuine humility, Talbu, before Allah. The Sufi understands this raising as both spiritual rank in the Akira and, as shown in the story of Moses, peace be upon him, temporal empowerment, Tamkīn in the dunya. The divine plan actively reverses the worldly order, where the one who consciously lowers his nafs ego for the sake of Allah is the one who will be divinely raised. The hadith also serves as a crucial ethical counterpoint to the arrogance of Pharaoh, affirming that the root of Fasād, mischief, corruption, is the spiritual pride that refuses to acknowledge its status as a servant of Allah. The believer's duty is thus clear. Embrace the spiritual poverty, faith, and humility that draw Allah's favor and guarantee the ultimate inheritance that the tyrant desperately tries to monopolize. Let us now supplicate, drawing from the profound lessons of these verses, asking Allah to grant us a deeper understanding and to guide our every step. O Allah, Lord of majesty and might, the only source of true ilm, we implore you to make the stories of your prophets a wellspring of belief, emin, and certainty for our souls. Grant us the wisdom to recognize the tyranny of the nafs within us, preventing us from the exaltation, Uluww, and mischief, Fasād, that you condemned in Pharaoh. Include us among those whom you favor and raise, making us true inheritors, Wārithīn, of goodness and justice on this land. Grant us the profound humility, tabu, and patience, sabr, of your messenger, Moses, peace be upon him, that our ultimate end may be one of establishment and eternal victory in your presence, transforming our inner landscape from a scene of conflict to one of serene submission. May Allah illuminate your heart and mind with the light of this divine ilm. May He make your channel a beacon of guidance for all who seek spiritual clarity and truth. May your efforts be a source of immense reward, and may you be granted the highest stations of paradise. May the peace and blessings of Allah always be upon you and your loved ones. May He grant you unwavering steadfastness on the path of truth, and may your work be a testament to His magnificent names, ArRahman and ArRaheem. Amin.